The night the HOA patrol crossed the fence line onto old Samuel Buck Langford's ranch, the moon hung low and red like an omen, and the wind carried the faint metallic tang of an oncoming storm. But what they didn't know was that Grandpa had been sitting on his porch since sundown, shotgun across his knees, waiting for the sound of tires on gravel that would confirm his suspicions that this fight wasn't over. Because when men in suits think they can steal a Texan's land by slipping bylaws under his fence post, they forget the law of the land came long before theirs did. For months, the Cedar Bluff Homeowners Association had been creeping closer, buying up acreage on the edges of the Langford Ranch, promising development partnerships and community expansion, words that meant concrete and covenants where there used to be cattle and wild mesquite. Buck had ignored their letters, their fake inspections, even the sheriff's polite warnings that the HOA's legal team had deep pockets and friends at the county courthouse. He'd seen men like them before back in Iraq, polite smiles hiding loaded intentions. The first time they'd sent someone onto his property, he'd fired a warning shot into the dirt 5 yards short of their boots. The second time, they came back at night and cut his northern fence. But tonight felt different. His grandson, Luke, who'd been helping mend the fences that week, had noticed tire tracks half buried in the dust along the south ridge, fresh prints that didn't belong to any ranch hand. Luke was 24, quick-tempered, and thought his grandpa's patience was a weakness. Buck had told him, "Patience ain't weakness, boy. It's aiming slow so you don't miss." But even Buck's patience had limits, and as the wind picked up and the coyotes fell silent, he knew the limit was about to be tested. Around 10 p.m., the sound came. 3 engines cutting quietly, headlights blacked out, the dull crunch of rubber rolling over caliche. Buck reached down, slid 3 shells into the old double-barrel 12-gauge, and muttered under his breath, "Trespassers don't get warnings twice." From the porch, he could see silhouettes moving beyond the barn, flashlights snapping on and off like nervous fireflies. Luke, restless inside the house, peeked through the window. "Grandpa, those aren't ranch hands." Buck gave a slow nod. "Nope, that's a patrol. HOA thinks they're the law tonight." He rose, boots creaking, and the sound of the screen door opening was loud enough that the intruders froze for a heartbeat before one whispered, "Keep moving." "He's old." They started toward the shed, Buck's shed, where he kept the land deeds and something else they didn't know about. A steel trunk stamped with U.S. Army insignia and a warning label half faded by dust. Inside were his service records, maps, and the last letter from his commanding officer, a man who now worked for the governor. Buck had kept that letter sealed for 15 years, waiting for the day he might need to remind someone that this patch of Texas dirt was federally protected heritage land, untouched by zoning boards or HOA ordinances. But tonight it wasn't the letter he reached for, it was justice, plain and cold. He stepped off the porch and disappeared into the dark, his boots silent in the dust. Down by the fence, the HOA patrol was cutting a lock and whispering about surveillance photos. One of them, a tall man with a clipboard, hissed, "Corporate wants the footage of him threatening that inspector. We'll post it online, get sympathy on our side." Another laughed. "Old man won't even know what hit him. He's sitting on land worth $5 million easy." They didn't notice the faint glimmer of metal 30 yards out, the reflection of moonlight off a shotgun barrel. Buck's voice came low, steady, like gravel rolling downhill. "You boys lost?" The flashlight swung, catching the edge of his face, calm, lined, eyes sharp as the barrel he held level. "Private property," he said, "and I don't recall inviting a patrol." One of the men stammered, "Sir, we're with the Cedar Bluff Community Improvement Team. We have a right to—" The rest of the sentence vanished under the sound of the shotgun clicking. Buck didn't fire, not yet, but he let the sound hang there, echoing off the barn like thunder's first warning. "You have a right to turn around," he said. "Do it before I count to 3. They hesitated. Luke stepped out behind him, rifle slung, heart pounding so loud he thought the intruders could hear it. 1, Buck said. The flashlight beams quivered. 2. One of them reached for his radio. 3. Buck fired into the dirt, and the explosion tore the silence in half. Dust and sparks flew. The patrol scrambled, swearing, falling over each other. Luke almost laughed, but then the sound of a fourth engine roared to life from the road, a black SUV pulling up with tinted windows. The door opened, and a woman stepped out in heels that didn't belong anywhere near ranch soil. Miranda Kane, HOA president. Her smile gleamed white under the floodlight she'd brought herself. "Mr. Langford," she called, "you've made quite the spectacle." "You can't threaten community officers." Buck spat in the dirt. "You mean trespassers?" She held up a folder. "You've ignored certified mail, calls, and county notices. This land is being reviewed for eminent domain transfer, community expansion. I suggest you come quietly before we involve law enforcement." Luke swore. "That's not how law works." But Miranda didn't even glance at him. "Oh, you'd be surprised what law can do when the county wants new homes." Buck raised his shotgun again, but this time Miranda didn't flinch. "Go ahead, fire. We're live streaming, Mr. Langford." One of her men held up a phone. Its red light blinked like a trap. Buck hesitated, not out of fear, but calculation. He lowered the gun an inch. Miranda's smile widened. "Good. Now you're being reasonable." And then, somewhere near the shed, a metallic crack rang out, the sound of a lock snapping. Miranda frowned. "What was that?" Luke turned. "They're breaking into the deed room." He sprinted toward the barn, Buck shouting after him, but then a flash of light, one of the patrolmen's tasers, crackled across the yard. Luke went down with a grunt. Buck's blood ran cold. He lifted the shotgun again, but a laser dot appeared on his chest. One of Miranda's men had drawn a sidearm. "Don't," she said. "Let's not escalate." But Buck had already made his decision. In the space of one breath, he tilted the barrel up, fired at the floodlight, plunging the yard into darkness, and dove behind a water trough. The flash of muzzle fire painted the scene red for an instant, enough to see Luke crawling toward the porch, the HOA patrol shouting orders, Miranda yelling, "Get the deeds!" The wind screamed through the broken light fixtures. Buck reloaded by feel, his old muscle memory clicking shells into place faster than most soldiers could manage. He whispered, "You chose the wrong ranch tonight." Then, somewhere near the tree line, he saw movement, a figure not in HOA uniform, moving low, steady, professional. It wasn't one of his ranch hands either. Through the strobe of gunlight, he glimpsed a face he hadn't seen in 20 years. A scar across the jaw, a familiar military stance. The man raised 2 fingers in silent greeting before vanishing again. Buck froze. Could it be? Before he could think, an explosion ripped through the shed, sending papers and flames skyward. The HOA patrol screamed, diving for cover. Miranda shouted for a retreat. Buck ran toward the fire, shouting Luke's name, but what stopped him cold wasn't the burning wood. It was the open trunk inside the shed, its contents gone. The army case. Someone had stolen it. And in the flicker of the flames, Buck saw something spray-painted on the wall that hadn't been there before. A symbol from his military past, one only a handful of men should know. His heart pounded as sirens wailed in the distance. The HOA vehicles peeled away, leaving dust and chaos behind. Luke staggered up beside him, coughing. "Grandpa, what was that?" Buck didn't answer. He stared at the symbol, a black eagle clutching a lightning bolt, and whispered, "This isn't about the HOA anymore." Then a voice came from behind him, calm, cold, and all too familiar. "Hello again, Captain Langford. Long time no see." Buck turned, shotgun raised, but the man from the tree line was already there, holding the stolen army case, its padlock swinging loose, and he said, "They weren't supposed to find this yet. Now they will." The firelight flickered across his face, revealing eyes Buck once trusted in combat. "You're in over your head, old friend," the man said, backing into the dark. "And they're coming for the rest of your land by sunrise." The sound of sirens grew louder, blue lights flashing over the ridge. Buck lowered his gun just as Luke whispered, "Who is he?" Buck's voice came low, haunted. "The last man I ever gave orders to." Then the stranger vanished into the night, leaving only smoke, chaos, and a cliffhanger that would change the meaning of trespass forever. The flames from the shed still crackled when the sheriff's cruisers rolled up the drive. But by then the stranger was gone, and all that remained of the night's madness was smoke, shattered glass, and the uneasy silence that follows betrayal. The kind that seeps into your bones and makes the air taste like copper. Buck Langford stood by the ruins of his shed, shotgun dangling at his side, the faint glow of blue and red lights painting him like a ghost from another war. Luke was sitting on the porch steps, a bruise darkening along his jaw from the taser, his eyes locked on the symbol scorched into the shed wall, the black eagle clutching a lightning bolt. Sheriff Holbrook, a man Buck had known since his Army days, stepped out of his cruiser with the slow gait of someone who already knew this was going to be trouble. "Buck," he said, tipping his hat, "you want to tell me why half the HOA's night crew is in the ER and your barn's burning?" Buck didn't answer right away. He just stared into the embers and said, "Because they came looking for something that was never theirs." The sheriff sighed. "You've been sitting on that military crate all these years, haven't you?" That made Luke's head snap up. "You knew about it?" Holbrook shrugged. "Everybody who served with your granddaddy knew about it. Nobody talked about it, though. Classified stuff." He lowered his voice. "But if that symbol's back, it means someone higher-up's taking interest again." Buck turned to him, eyes narrowing. "You mean Black Raptor?" Holbrook's face tightened. "Keep that name out of your mouth, Buck. That operation's buried deeper than the Pentagon's basement." Luke looked between them. "What the hell is Black Raptor?" Buck didn't answer, so the sheriff did. "Back in the 80s, before you were born, your grandpa led a recon unit that went off-grid. Real hush-hush stuff. They did some things in South America, clean-up jobs no one was supposed to know about. But then something went wrong. Documents, names, coordinates, all vanished, supposedly destroyed. And now," he gestured to the ashes. "Now somebody's digging it up again." Buck exhaled long and hard. "And that somebody just walked off my land with the only piece of evidence left." Holbrook scratched his chin. "You saying the HOA's tied to this?" Buck gave a grim nod. "They're the cover, a convenient one. Money, real estate, land deeds, perfect way to move people and equipment without raising alarms." Holbrook cursed under his breath. "You gonna run?" Buck's jaw set. "Run from my own land? Not a damn chance." He looked toward the horizon, where dawn was smearing the sky with gray. "They'll come back, and next time, they won't bother pretending to be neighbors." By noon, the county fire trucks were gone, leaving behind wet ash and empty promises. Miranda Kane hadn't been seen since the night before, but her SUV was still parked half a mile down the road, abandoned, its tires slashed. Luke found her cell phone in the grass, screen cracked, one last video still recording, static, then a man's voice saying, "Phase 2 begins at dusk." Buck watched the footage 3 times before turning the phone off. "They're planning something," he said. Luke frowned. "Maybe it's just HOA legal crap." But Buck shook his head. "Legal doesn't need phases. Military operations do." He walked into the house, pulling out an old wooden box from under his bed. Inside was a rusted key and a folded map covered in grease and coffee stains. "This here," he said, "was our old extraction grid. Black Raptor used it to move assets between safe houses. If they're using my land, it's 'cause one of those routes runs right under it." Luke blinked. "Under it? You mean tunnels?" Buck nodded slowly. "Not exactly tunnels, old supply trenches from the war games back in the 40s. My granddaddy's crew dug 'em out before the ranch was even mine. When the government abandoned 'em, I filled most in. Most, but not all." Luke's stomach turned. "So what? You think they're using those tunnels to move whatever's in that case?" "Or something worse," Buck said. "Information, people, doesn't matter. If they're back, it means they're cleaning house. And they don't leave witnesses." At dusk, the wind shifted again, carrying the smell of oil and ozone, and Buck knew the storm he'd felt last night wasn't done. He told Luke to lock the doors, grabbed his truck keys, and headed toward the south ridge. The dirt road wound through acres of scrub and mesquite, the air alive with insects and the hum of distant engines. About 3 miles out, he saw it, fresh tire tracks leading off the road into the old quarry. The same quarry that used to serve as a test site for munitions decades ago. As he crept closer, headlights off, he saw figures moving down below. Men in tactical gear, not HOA polos this time. And in the middle of them, floodlights illuminated a row of black containers marked with the same eagle insignia. "Well, I'll be damned," Buck whispered. He killed the engine and reached under the seat for his M1911 pistol, still polished, still deadly. He moved through the shadows like he was 20 again, boots silent, breath even. From behind a boulder, he watched as a helicopter lifted off from the far side of the pit, carrying something large wrapped in a tarp. The men below were shouting orders. "Move the rest to Sector 7. "Mrs. Kane's been compromised." Buck froze. Miranda, compromised. So, she hadn't been the one pulling the strings after all. She'd just been another pawn. A flash of movement caught his eye, a man pacing near the containers, barking commands. The same scarred face from the night before. Buck gritted his teeth. "You," he muttered. "You're still alive after all." He waited until most of the convoy had left before slipping down the ridge. The closer he got, the more he could smell jet fuel and hear the low hum of electronics. One of the container's doors was ajar. Inside, rows of servers blinked green and blue connected to satellite dishes. Data transfer, massive amounts. Buck snapped photos with his phone, sent them to Holbrook, and whispered, "Proof enough for you?" But before he could move, a light flared behind him and a voice said, "Always we're too curious for your own good, Captain." The scarred man stepped into view, pistol drawn, the army case sitting beside him. "You don't understand what's at stake," he said. Buck turned slowly. "I understand betrayal when I see it, Sergeant Cole." Cole smirked. "Betrayal? No, this is patriotism. You think the war's ended just because you retired? The country still needs operations like Black Raptor off the books unseen. The HOA, the land deals, it's just cover. We're building something bigger, something permanent." Buck's jaw clenched. "You're selling national land to foreign investors and calling it patriotism?" Cole's eyes went hard. "I'm preserving what's left of power. You either join or get buried under it." He raised the pistol. Buck's mind raced. "You came back for that case. What's inside?" Cole hesitated just a fraction too long. "Names, accounts, operations, the ones still active. And you think I'll let you walk off with it? You won't have a choice." The hammer cocked, but before he could fire, the ground trembled, a low rumble from beneath the quarry. Cole turned, confused. Buck dove, rolling behind a barrel as the first explosion went off. Fire ripped through the pit, hurling men into the air. One of the containers burst open, spilling papers and hard drives like confetti. Cole shouted orders, trying to rally what was left of his crew, but Buck was already moving, snatching the case and sprinting for cover. Bullets whined past his ears. He stumbled, ducked, fired 2 shots back. One hit a fuel drum. The explosion that followed tore the night apart. When Buck came to, he was half buried under debris, the case still clutched in his hand. The quarry was a crater of smoke and twisted metal. Of Cole there was no sign. He staggered to his feet, ribs aching, and limped toward his truck. But when he reached the ridge, he saw headlights waiting. Not sheriff's lights, government ones. Black SUVs lined up, engines idling, no markings. A man stepped out, suit crisp, earpiece glinting. "Mr. Langford," he said smoothly. "I'm Agent Rhodes, Department of Homeland Security. We'll be taking that case." Buck laughed bitterly. "You're late," Rhodes smiled faintly. "On the contrary, we've been here the whole time. You just didn't see us." Luke suddenly appeared at the edge of the road, out of breath, rifle in hand. "Grandpa!" Rhodes raised a hand. "Easy there, son. Your grandfather's been helping us. He just didn't know it." Buck's grip tightened. "Helping?" Rhodes nodded. "You were bait, Mr. Langford. We needed someone Cole would trust enough to flush him out. And you did beautifully." Buck's stomach turned. "You used my land, my family, collateral," Rhodes said simply. "Necessary for national security." Luke took a step forward. "You can't just—" A second SUV door opened, and Miranda Kane stepped out, alive, though pale and trembling. "It's true," she said weakly. "They're DHS. They told me to push the expansion project to draw you out." Buck's heart pounded. "You set me up." Miranda shook her head. "I didn't know about the explosions or the soldiers. They said you were hiding stolen property. They said—" She broke off, glancing at Rhodes, who was now holding out his hand. "The case, Mr. Langford, now!" Buck stared at it, the steel dented, blood smeared on the latch. Inside were secrets men had killed for, and now men in suits wanted to bury again. He asked quietly, "What happens if I refuse?" Rhodes smiled thinly. "Then we'll classify this entire ranch as a restricted site and seize everything you own." Luke raised his rifle. "Over my dead body." "That can be arranged," Rhodes said, motioning to his agents. The night erupted again, shouts, engines, blinding headlights. Buck fired a warning shot and chaos broke loose. Miranda screamed. Agents ducked. Luke grabbed his grandfather's arm, shouting, "Run!" They bolted for the truck, bullets slicing through the air. The windshield shattered, but the engine roared to life, and Buck slammed the accelerator, dirt spraying as they tore down the ridge. In the rearview mirror, black SUVs chased, their lights cutting through the smoke like predator eyes. "They won't stop!" Luke shouted. Buck gritted his teeth. "They don't have to. We're not staying." He veered off the main road, cutting across a dry creek bed toward the hills. The case sat on the seat between them, humming faintly, some device inside active now. Luke glanced at it. "Grandpa, it's glowing." Buck risked a look. The latchlight pulsed red, rhythmic, electronic. "They've activated a tracker," Luke cursed. "So what now?" Buck took a hard turn toward the canyon. "We go to ground. There's a place they don't know about." They drove through the night until the road vanished into rocks. The old storm cellar lay hidden under an outcropping camouflaged by brush. Inside, Buck lit a lantern, set the case on a steel table, and exhaled. "We buy time, figure out what's inside before they find us." Luke was shaking. "This is insane, Grandpa. The HOA, DHS, your old squad, it's like the whole damn country's after you." Buck looked at the flickering light, shadows dancing on the walls. "Not me," he said softly. "What's in this case?" He flipped the latch. The lid hissed open, revealing stacks of documents, old photos, flash drives, and a small black envelope marked with a single word: contingency. He opened it. Inside was a single key card and a set of coordinates. Langford Ranch, sublevel access grid 47. Buck's pulse spiked. "Sublevel," he whispered. "They never filled it in." Luke frowned. "What's down there?" Buck stared at the map. "Something they built long before I came home. Something they were afraid I'd find." He pocketed the card, closed the case, and said, "We're going back at dawn." Outside, thunder rumbled again, low and long, rolling across the hills like drums of war. Luke looked at his grandfather. "You think Cole's still alive?" Buck didn't answer. He just chambered around and said, "If he is, he's waiting down there." And as lightning split the sky, illuminating the distant ridge where black SUVs prowled like wolves, Buck whispered to himself, "They wanted a war on my land. Now they're gonna get one." When dawn bled through the storm clouds, the ranch looked like it had been chewed up and spat out by the night. Ashes where the shed had stood, deep tire grooves carved into the mud, and the smell of cordite still clinging to the wind. But down below, hidden under a layer of stone and dust that hadn't been disturbed in 60 years, something older stirred as Buck Langford pried open the hatch marked Grid 47. The hinges screamed, exhaling a draft of stale air that smelled like rust and secrets. Luke covered his nose, flashlight trembling as the beam caught a metal staircase vanishing into darkness. "Grandpa, are you sure this is safe?" he whispered. Buck didn't answer, just tightened his grip on the shotgun and started down, every step echoing like a heartbeat in a tomb. The tunnel walls were concrete, lined with conduit and faded stencils, property of U.S. Army Corps, each letter half buried under mildew. By the time they reached the bottom, their lights fell on a blast door half ajar, its locking wheel bent as if forced open long ago. Inside lay rows of filing cabinets toppled like gravestones, papers strewn across the floor, and in the center, a rusted generator that still gave off a faint electrical hum. Luke crouched, brushing away debris until he found a plaque bolted to the floor. Black Raptor Command Node. Buck's chest tightened. "I told them to seal it," he muttered. "They said they would." He flipped a switch on the generator. Lights flickered on one by one, revealing a command room frozen in time. Maps pinned to corkboards. Faded photos of men in uniform, and in the far corner, a bank of monitors that suddenly came to life with static and a single blinking message. Access denied. Roads protocol active. Luke stepped back. DHS was here, Buck nodded grimly. They never left. A metallic clang echoed from deeper in the corridor, followed by the crunch of boots on gravel. Luke raised his rifle. Someone else is down here. Out of the darkness emerged two figures. Miranda Kane, pale, dirt-streaked, eyes wild, and behind her, Sergeant Cole, blood crusted along his sleeve but very much alive. Cole's gun was leveled steady at Buck. "Put the weapon down, Captain," he said. "Rhodes wants you alive, for now." Buck's jaw set. "You're late to your own funeral," Cole smirked. "You still don't see it, do you? This place? These tunnels? They're not relics. They're the foundation of a new command network. The HOA, the land acquisitions, they're cover for rebuilding Black Raptor under civilian infrastructure. We control the land, we control the grid, and we control who gets to live on it," Luke barked. "You're insane!" Cole's smile didn't waver. "Patriotism always looks insane to the weak." He motioned to Miranda, who trembled. "She's the key holder. She has Rhodes's access codes. She opens that console, and we wipe every record tying this to Washington." Miranda shook her head. "You said you wouldn't hurt them." Cole's eyes went cold. "I lied." The moment stretched thin as wire. Then Buck moved, fast, deliberate, swinging the shotgun toward the ceiling and firing. The blast took out the overhead lights, plunging the room into strobing red emergency glow. Luke dropped behind a console, returning fire as Buck lunged forward, tackling Cole. The two men hit the floor hard, grappling in the dark, the steel case skidding across the floor until Miranda snatched it and bolted toward the service tunnel. "Run!" Buck shouted, fist connecting with Cole's jaw. Sparks rained as bullets struck the generator. Luke chased after Miranda, shouting, "Stop! You'll bring the whole place down!" But she was already punching the keycard into a control panel. Alarms wailed, the floor vibrating as hydraulic doors sealed behind her. Buck slammed Cole's head against the floor once, twice, until the man went still, then staggered to his feet just as Luke returned, empty-handed. She locked herself in the uplink room. "Then that's where we end this." They pushed through the smoke-filled corridor, following the pulse of red light until they reached a door labeled COM Node 01. Inside, Miranda was typing furiously, tears streaking her face. Screens around her flashing "Purge in progress. 3 minutes to full wipe." "Don't!" Luke shouted. "She's deleting evidence." Miranda turned, hands shaking. "They'll kill us if this data gets out. You don't understand what's in here." Buck stepped closer. "Then tell me." She hesitated, voice cracking. "They're not building communities, they're building control zones. Every HOA site, every development, it's wired into surveillance infrastructure. Drones, sensors, crowd control tech, all hidden in plain sight. Cole and Rhodes are setting up a private defense grid under federal contracts. If this goes live, every citizen's movement in this county will be monitored." Buck's stomach dropped. "You helped them." "I didn't know what it was," she cried. "They told me it was security." The monitors flickered again, Rhodes's face appearing via feed, calm and predatory. "Mr. Langford, I warned you about refusing orders. Now you forced my hand." The countdown hit 2 minutes. Buck raised the shotgun at the screen. "You think you can erase this? You think the truth stays buried?" Rhodes smiled faintly. "Buried is exactly where it belongs." Then the feed cut, and the entire complex began to shake. Buck grabbed Miranda's wrist. "Reverse it!" "I can't. The purge is physical. It'll overload the core," Luke shouted over the rising roar. "Then we get out now." But Buck looked at the case, then at the terminal, and an idea sparked. "What if we upload instead of delete?" Miranda blinked. "The uplink's fried." "Not if I reroute it through the generator," Buck said, already yanking open panels, hot-wiring cables. Luke held the flashlight while sparks bit the air. "Grandpa, that'll blow the grid." "Exactly." "It'll fry the local servers, but send a data burst to every open frequency. Radio, satellite, hell, even the county weather tower. "Someone'll see it." Miranda hesitated, then nodded, typing override codes as Buck connected the wires. The seconds ticked down, 30, 25, until the screens flashed data transfer initiated. Cole groaned on the floor, reaching for his sidearm, but Luke kicked it away, shouting, "Stay down!" The tremors grew violent. Miranda screamed, "Core breach! We have to go!" Buck slammed the last lever down. Light exploded through the room, the roar of energy like thunder trapped underground. They ran, the hallway collapsing behind them, flames chasing their heels. At the ladder, Luke climbed first, dragging Miranda up, then reached for his grandfather, but Buck hesitated halfway, looking back at the inferno swallowing the past. For an instant he saw ghosts, his old unit, faces lit by muzzle flash, saluting in the firelight, and he whispered, "Not this time." Then he climbed out as the tunnel erupted, a plume of smoke blasting from the ground like a volcano. They tumbled into the dirt as debris rained down, coughing, gasping. When the dust settled, the hatch was gone, sealed forever under rubble. Luke looked toward the horizon where sirens wailed again, faint but closing in. "Did it send?" he asked. Buck listened to the distant crackle of a radio tower suddenly alive with interference, and a faint automated voice repeating, "Black Raptor data upload, file received." He smiled grimly. "Yeah, it sent." Miranda sat trembling, staring at the rising sun. "What now?" Buck wiped soot from his face. "Now we wait for whoever comes first. The government to bury this again, or the people to start asking questions." Luke placed a hand on his shoulder. "And if they come after us?" Buck chambered a fresh shell, eyes hard as iron. "Then they'll learn what trespass really means." Thunder rolled one last time across the hills, echoing the rumble deep beneath the ranch where Black Raptor had finally burned itself out. But somewhere beyond the ridge, an unmarked SUV idled in the dawn haze, and Agent Rhodes lowered his phone with a thin smile, whispering to the unseen figure beside him, "Phase 3 just began." 3 days after the explosion, the world outside Buck Langford's ranch no longer looked the same. News drones hovered above the smoking crater where his pasture once rolled green and open. Reporters in body armor screamed into cameras about unauthorized militia activity, and government convoys choked the highway in both directions, while somewhere in the middle of it all, Buck sat on his porch, shotgun across his knees, staring out toward the horizon, as a radio inside the house hissed with static that occasionally formed words he didn't like hearing. Classified data breach, domestic insurgent, Langford compound, each one twisting the truth further away from what it had been. Luke and Miranda were inside, exhausted, trying to filter through what they'd salvaged from the upload. The burst had done more than anyone expected. It had flooded emergency frequencies, county servers, even weather satellites with Black Raptors, archives, photos, internal memos, blueprints of community security projects that revealed every HOA development across 3 states was wired into a covert defense network funded under fake agricultural grants. For the first time, the story wasn't conspiracy. It was evidence, undeniable and raw, but instead of answers, it had unleashed chaos. Activists were calling for hearings, federal agents were raiding local councils, and yet Rhodes remained unseen, operating from somewhere deeper in the chain, erasing traces faster than the truth could travel. When the first unmarked SUV rolled up the dirt road that morning, Buck didn't move. The sun hung low, bleeding gold over the ridge as 3 men stepped out, 1 in a tailored suit, 2 in tactical vests. The suited man raised his hands, calm, rehearsed. "Captain Langford, I'm Agent Dorsey with Internal Affairs. We're here to ensure your safety." Buck spat into the dirt. "You mean ensure I shut up?" Dorsey smiled faintly. "Depends how loud you plan to be." Before Buck could answer, Miranda burst out of the house with a tablet in her hands, her face pale but burning with conviction. "We traced Rhodes," she said breathlessly. "He's in D.C., at a shell office under Homeland Strategic Infrastructure. We can prove he authorized Black Raptor's expansion. The data fragment survived. Dorsey's mask cracked just slightly. That's classified information, miss. Luke stepped forward, rifle slung but eyes fierce. It's public now. The agents exchanged glances. One lifted a radio, murmured something about containment, but before any command came back, a new sound filled the valley, a distant whine growing into a roar. Buck's head snapped up. Helicopters, 2 of them, bearing no markings, flying low. Dorsey's calm evaporated. He turned to his men. They're not ours. The ground trembled as the first missile struck a half-mile away, a warning shot that sprayed dirt and shrapnel into the sky. They're wiping the site, Miranda screamed. Buck grabbed her arm. Get inside! They ran for the barn, diving behind the old tractor as another blast tore through the field. From the smoke, the helicopters descended lower, and a voice boomed from a loudspeaker. Surrender the data! This is a restricted federal recovery! Luke's heart hammered. That's Rhodes's voice! Buck peered over the hood, eyes narrowing. Then this ends right here. He sprinted toward the pickup, pulling a tarp off the mounted hunting rifle. An old .50 caliber his father once used for elk. You handle his birds, I'll handle the snake. Luke loaded the second rifle, covering his grandfather as bullets ripped through the dirt. Miranda, trembling but determined, tapped on her tablet, whispering, If I can link it to the county's emergency broadcast tower, I can live stream his attack in real time. Do it, Buck grunted, setting up the tripod. The chopper banked, its side door sliding open to reveal Rhodes himself, headset gleaming, eyes hidden behind mirrored lenses. You think the world cares, Langford? His voice crackled through the air. They'll label you terrorist, traitor, lunatic. You can't fight the machine. Buck steadied the barrel, the wind whipping his hair. Maybe not, but I can sure as hell make it limp. He fired. The shot cracked like thunder, punching through the helicopter's nose. Smoke poured out. Rhodes ducked, shouting orders. The second chopper circled, unleashing a hail of fire that shredded the barn roof. Miranda screamed, covering her head while Luke returned fire, his bullets sparking harmlessly off the armored hull. Then, suddenly, a mechanical whine pierced through the chaos. Every nearby radio, drone, even the agent's comms blaring the same signal. Miranda's broadcast, streaming live across every local channel. The video feed showed Rhodes's face, clearly inside the chopper, barking commands to neutralize the target. Within seconds, social media exploded, thousands tuning in, commenting, recording. It's live, Miranda shouted. Everyone's watching. Rhodes's composure cracked. Cut the signal! But it was too late. The world had seen him. Buck took aim again, eyes steady, breath slow. This is for the men you buried under your lies. He pulled the trigger. The bullet struck the engine mount, and this time the chopper spun out, clipping a pine tree before erupting in a fireball that lit the entire hillside. The second helicopter veered off, retreating into the clouds. Silence fell, broken only by the crackle of fire and the shriek of bending metal. Luke dropped his rifle, chest heaving. Is it over? Buck watched the flames dance, the wind carrying embers toward the horizon. No, he said quietly. But it's out of their hands now. By sunset, emergency crews swarmed the area. Reporters shouting questions Buck refused to answer. Miranda handed her tablet to a journalist from Channel 7, whispering, Don't let them bury this. The woman nodded solemnly. As the first stars appeared, Luke sat beside his grandfather on the porch steps. What happens next? He asked. Buck looked at the sky, where faint lights blinked, news drones, not surveillance ones this time, and a tired smile ghosted his lips. Now they'll dig, and when they dig, they'll find everything. He leaned back, closing his eyes as the night breeze carried the faint echo of distant sirens, and for the first time in years, he didn't flinch. Somewhere far away, in A dimly lit government office, Rhodes's burnt ID badge lay on a desk beside a new file labeled Project Sentinel, stamped with the words Reauthorization Pending. A hand, unseen, closed the folder slowly, whispering, Round 2. But on that quiet ranch in Texas, Buck Langford finally let the shotgun rest, the crickets singing in the tall grass as the last line of the old world faded with the smoke, and the first glimmer of truth finally broke free into the open sky.